Welcome to SEPSA Talk. I am Evans Apia Kisi, the host of SEPSA Talk. SEPSA is Center for Better Society Advocacy and Research Africa. SEPSA Africa is a non-profit organization that believes in a better society for all. We in SEPSA Africa believe that a better society begins with you and I. Hashtag, a better society begins with me. For more information, please log on to www.sepsaafrica.org. Please follow us on the various social media platforms: YouTube, SEPSA Talk, Facebook at SEPSA Africa, Instagram, SEPSA Africa, and Twitter at SEPSA Africa. Like always, today, we bring you another interesting discussion on the topic COVID-19 vaccination campaign in Ghana. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed lives, disrupted economies, altered social activities, and caused millions of deaths. The fight against the pandemic worldwide has seen vaccine development and rollout move at a record high speed. Ghana is among the first African countries that began a vaccination campaign from the 1st of March 2021 using COVAX doses provided by the COVAX Facilities CAVI-COVAX Advanced Market Commitment. Though vaccination is one of the many steps Ghana can take to protect her citizens from COVID-19, a number of Ghanaians have doubts as to whether the vaccines are actually safe or not. In this episode of SEPSA Talk, we discuss the work, safety, and side effects of COVID-19 vaccines. We also highlight guidelines for the ongoing vaccination in Ghana and the many ways to help stop the spread of COVID-19. And to help us deal with this important issue are Dr. Justice Boakye. Is a medical doctor and research immunologist. He's a clinical research fellow, COVID-19 vaccines and therapeutic trials at the National Institute of Health Research, University College London, United Kingdom. He holds PhD in infection and immunovaccinology from the St. George's University of London, UK. He also has MD degree from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Ghana. I must say it's a pleasure to host you. Welcome to SEPSA Talk, Dr. Justice Boakye.
Thank you, Evans. I'm honored to be here.
Great, thank you very much. And our next guest is Ms. Martina Adrianima Bonsu. She's a pharmacist and a registered member of Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana. She's also an assistant lecturer at the School of Pharmacy, University of Health and Allied Sciences in Ghana. She's currently a doctoral candidate at the Institute of Pharmaceutical Technology and Biopharmaceutics in Philips University, Marburg, Germany. She holds Bachelor of Pharmacy and MPhil in Pharmacy from the same university, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Ghana. I must say, it's a pleasure to host you. Welcome to SEPSA Talk, Ms. Martina Adrianima Bonsu.
Thank you very much, Evans, for having me. I am pleased to be here.
Great. So thank you very much, lady and gentlemen. I must also say that we are streaming live on Facebook as we do always. And for those of you who follow SEPSA Africa, as well as myself and AK Mensa, feel free to share. And our fellow SEPSarians, keep your comments active, keep your questions coming, and I'm sure that we'll be able to answer them for you. I must also say that as today is Ghana's Independence Day, Ghana turning 64 years today, we are just grateful to God and country, and we hope that Ghana indeed would be a better place than it is at the moment. Great. So I would like to start with you, Dr. Justice Kofi Boakye. And the question that I would like to ask you is that So can you explain to our audience, I mean, how this COVID-19 vaccines work, including the different types that we have, how many shots are required, and the benefits of getting vaccinated? This is also because there are a lot of people out there who feel that I am not sick, and so why should I take the vaccines, And so why, if you could walk our audience through how these vaccines work, particularly the benefits that one is likely to get for us. Thank you.
The idea of vaccines, vaccination and vaccines is not exactly new. It has been in existence since as early as the 10th century. It's been ongoing, and there have been various practices of it. In fact, I think the idea of vaccination actually came to the fore during the smallpox pandemic, if I may call it a pandemic, when the world was the same way we are plagued with COVID now. The world at the time was plagued with smallpox, and it was a big deal, killed many people and so on. And a scientist by name Edward Jenner, he conducted the first properly documented vaccinations. But before then, people had done all sorts of things. And the idea of what we call variolation, which is a little different from vaccination, but it's quite close, was practiced in China and in several other parts of Asia. So the principle of vaccination is simply that your immune system, when there's an infection, your immune system fights for you. Okay, now the process of fighting or getting ready to fight takes some time. It takes time for it to build its antibodies. It takes time for it to gather cells and so on. And so during that period of preparing to fight, the infection gets established, and before you realize it, that is when it does its worst harm. If the preparation is not quick enough, the infection takes over before your immune system is prepared to fight. So what we do in vaccination is to prime your immune system. By priming your immune system, we present it with a weaker form of an infection, or of a bacteria, or of a virus. Now, once we present that weaker form, which is not capable of overwhelming your immune system or causing significant disease, your immune system acknowledges it and starts to build the process of defending you, okay? However, time is not of the essence here, because whatever you've been presented with as a vaccine is not capable of causing disease. So your immune system has enough time to prepare. Subsequently, when you come across the real infection, that time for preparing to fight has been cut short, because your immune system would have recognized it and said, look, I know this. Last time I saw this, this is how I fought it. I got these bodies, these cell types. I produced this antibody. It is already there. It goes back into its memory. And so if you, in immunology, you hear a lot about memory. It goes back into its memory, and then it produces the same response. Shorter time period and memory means that this time around, your immune system will be better prepared to do what? To fight. And that's the whole idea of vaccination. And it has been in use for several years, as I mentioned. If you were born in Ghana, you are definitely bound to have received some vaccinations or some vaccines. I think I can count at least 10 vaccines for everybody born in Ghana. And the first is, if you look on your shoulder, your right shoulder, you see a scar there. Almost every Ghanaian has it. So a few people have it on their left. That's actually the TB scar. It's a vaccine for tuberculosis, and that's what prevents tuberculosis in children. When we were kids, you heard of the 9 killer diseases, which was quite common and popular. People suffered polio, so you saw children who were limping and so on. There are children who suffered whooping cough and measles and so on. But you don't see that anymore, and it's simply because almost every child in Ghana gets vaccinated against these. When the mothers say they are taking their children or their babies for weighing, or they're going for injections, it's vaccinations they are going for. They probably don't know it is vaccination, but it's actually vaccination. What they drop on your lip is a polio oral vaccine. So vaccination is not new. The principle of vaccination is not new to Ghanaians. We've had it over and over again. Now, with respect to COVID, the same principles have been applied in an attempt to get a vaccine for COVID. And let me just take the opportunity to clarify this thing about people saying we've had malaria and HIV and so on in the system for a long time. How come we suddenly have a vaccine for COVID and we have not had a vaccine for any of these? We do have a vaccine for malaria. It's just not as powerful or as efficacious as what we have for COVID. Now, your ability to develop a vaccine is very dependent on the type of parasite or virus you're talking about. Some of the viruses are so strong that they are able to dodge your immune system in a way that the immune system is unable to battle them. So HIV, for instance, is very, very good at this. It's very good at hiding itself from the immune system. It cripples your immune system in the first place. So if you want to develop a vaccine, whatever part you are using, by the time your body gets used to it, the virus would have changed its head itself, and the vaccine will not be working for it. So there have been several attempts to develop vaccines for HIV, but we've just not been successful. There's a malaria vaccine actually, which gives about 40% efficacy. I know it is being rolled out in Ghana, so currently people are being vaccinated against malaria in Ghana, but it's just not on a national scale, so people do not know. They're still in the trial stage, the testing stage. They're piloting it, as I'm told. So there are vaccines for these things. There have been attempts. It's just that those bacteria and those viruses are extremely complex. They present with complex mechanisms and are able to dodge your immune system. Now, for COVID, as dangerous as the virus is, it is immunologically quite simple. How it presents itself to the immune system is not too complex. So it wasn't too difficult to develop a vaccine to it. And there's what they call the spike protein, which is a protein on the surface of the COVID virus. It was easy to recognize that spike protein formed a core part of the infection. So if the virus did not have that core protein, it was unable to establish infection. So all scientists had to do was to be able to develop a vaccine using that core protein, focusing on the zooming in on that core protein, because you knew that if you're able to destroy that core protein, then the virus will not survive. So if you've heard anything about the vaccine so far, you hear a lot about spike protein, spike protein. That spike protein is a small part of the virus that is required so much in infection that without it, the virus is unable to survive or cause infection. Now, traditionally, vaccines were produced using weakened bacteria or viruses. So if someone like COVID, for instance, would have used a weakened virus, the virus that causes COVID, we use a weak form of it, present it to the immune system recognizes it, and then it builds response. However, over time, we have realized that when you present these weakened viruses, people with HIV, for instance, or AIDS, have very weak immune systems. So even that weak virus may be a bit too strong for them. So why don't we identify the specific parts of the virus that the immune system responds to, okay, and use that for the vaccine instead of putting in the whole virus? And that is the focus of current vaccine research. We're moving away from the traditional forms of using the whole virus or the whole bacteria and taking very small parts of it. And that has come to take center stage in COVID vaccines. So in COVID vaccines, most of them are based on the spike protein. That spike protein, which is a small part of the virus on its surface, which the immune system is able to recognize very easily, and which, when destroyed, the virus is unable to establish itself to cause infection. Is that okay? Okay. So that is what has been the focus. The Chinese people, they wanted a quicker way out, so they didn't use the spike protein. They have used the weakened virus, but that is not selling that much because nobody wants to take that, especially in Africa where we have lots of immunocompromised cases, HIV and so on. But most of the vaccines on the market now, the Oxford AstraZeneca one, which is what Ghana is using, is based on the spike protein. It's just using DNA material from the spike protein. Okay, the Pfizer vaccine is using mRNA material from the spike protein. The Sputnik is using DNA material from the spike protein. And all of them are in 2 doses, except the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is also using the spike protein anyway. Which is also using DNA from the spike protein, but uses a different shield, a way of presenting it quite different from all. That's the only one that is in 1 dose. All the others are in 2 doses, and they're basically very, very safe vaccines, extremely safe vaccines, tried and tested.
We will definitely come to the safety of the vaccines, and that will be a question to Martina, but thank you very much for the education already. I picked one main point, spike protein. I guess for our audience, perhaps some of these things might be a bit technical, but what is fascinating for us is the fact that you brought in the angle of why we've not been able to develop AIDS vaccines and malaria vaccines. You see that there are.
Yeah, I can't do that. The pathogens causing those conditions are complex, immunologically complex, so it's not easy to catch it. When you do it today and it changes itself tomorrow.
And you are saying that the speed to which this vaccine has been developed is the fact that it was easy to develop. I think this is where it's important for most people. If you draw the comparison between why until now we've not had such kind of momentum towards developing AIDS and malaria vaccines? Because you mentioned something that the AIDS virus is able to dodge our immune system.
Yeah, very easily. It cripples it basically. So now, to be able to even mount an immune response and for a vaccine to work, you must in the first place have a strong immune system. Your immune system must be able to respond. HIV basically cripples it. So the response for people with HIV and AIDS is not as good as regular people because you need your immune system to be able to respond to vaccine. But they are immunocompromised, so they struggle.
This is interesting because we also thought that we had the COVID virus is also very stubborn. It's able to mutate, but then still in terms of it dodging the immune system.
So let me make this clear that how immunologically complex a virus or bacteria is has nothing to do with the severity of disease it causes. Okay. There's no correlation between that. Some are very simple. It's like having a big giant who is a giant, very strong, able to fight people, but doesn't use any complex skills. If you ever watched wrestling, there was a guy called Gentle Giant, huge guy, thick, tall guy. Or he doesn't have any skills, nothing complex. All he does is to carry you, throw you away because of his weight. That's like COVID. Nothing complex about it. And then there was a very tiny guy called Rey Mysterio. He doesn't have the physical strength. He's an extremely small guy, but extremely skillful, able to dodge, able to manipulate the system, turns you around, very acrobatic, and so on. So there's no correlation. The immune response or the immune mechanisms are extremely different from the severity of disease that they cause. And there's no correlation between that. COVID causes very serious disease. It's not a joke, but immunologically, it's not the most complex virus to deal with.
Thank you very much. And I like the wrestling analogy. So folks, COVID is just like the gentle jack. It's just able to cause serious diseases, or it's able to cause deaths or infectious. It's quite infectious, as we've seen, that in terms of developing vaccines to boost the immune system in order to fight it, this is nothing complex. Thank you very much. Now, so I come to you, Martina, and of course, Dr. Boakye has already started, should I say, with the issue around safety, and he emphatically stated that the vaccines are safe. But you and I know that most Ghanaians, including myself, we are worried because we are told that it takes a longer time to develop vaccines. I mean, despite the education from Dr. Boakye that comparing it to the gentle jack, that it's not able to, cause serious damages to the immune system and the likes. The COVID vaccines, are you able to speak to it that are they really safe? Because people are worried if it takes years to develop vaccines. Were these vaccines thoroughly tested for safety before approved? I mean, how did it come about? Are we sure these are really safe for people?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I believe the arrival of the COVID vaccines in Ghana has sparked a lot of concerns about safety, efficacy, and it's generated a lot of buzz on social media and the likes. I believe these are all valid concerns because most people are not actually privy to the processes that a vaccine or a drug goes through before it is authorized for use by the public. So basically, developing a drug or a vaccine, so to speak, it's a long road full of checkpoints. It consists of different phases of extensive and rigorous testing that is designed in a way to ensure that these vaccines, after going through all these processes, are effective, safe, and then of high quality. Now, with the whole world struggling to contain the COVID-19 disease and all its related effects on socio-economic development, among others, various stakeholders have seen the need to come together to work hand in hand to develop an appropriate vaccine to mitigate the effects of the COVID-19 disease. WHO, several governments, research institutions, pharmaceutical manufacturing companies, NGOs, a lot of funding organizations have come on board to work hand in hand to ensure that a COVID vaccine was developed in record time. The fact that it was developed in that space of time does not have any effect on its quality. I am saying this because there is no stipulated time frame within which a vaccine is expected to be developed. As Dr. Boache previously said, each infectious disease is different in the sense that there are different causative organisms. The mechanism by which these organisms attack the host cells, establish clinical disease, is definitely also, it varies. And because of that, the approach to developing a safe vaccine in all these cases may vary. More so, looking at the havoc that COVID-19 wreaked globally, it generated a lot of attention. Everybody had it as a priority. I mean, pharmaceutical companies and research institutions were ready to shelve their ongoing work to focus on developing something to deal with the COVID-19 disease. Companies and governments, funding organizations were ready to put in a lot of money into R&D to ensure that a good vaccine was put across in time. So it's only possible that with all these facilities and resources that were being channeled into developing a vaccine, we could see something relatively faster paced than the other vaccines that have already been approved for use. Now, this notwithstanding, there are several standard processes that a vaccine should go through by way of development before it reaches a patient to use. There are a number of phases that are not necessarily time-bound, as I have to stress. These drugs are first taken through preclinical testing, followed by 3 phases of human clinical trials, after which successful candidates may obtain approval and authorization to be put on the market. Now, afterwards, there's a final phase, phase 4 clinical trials that involves the more or less monitoring for long-term side effects, also called the post-authorization monitoring or pharmacovigilance. So elaborating more on these different phases, just so people know that nobody just got up and put it down. I mean, any premature vaccine for people to use, it actually went through these phases that I am about to elaborate. So with the preclinical testing, vaccines development starts in the laboratory, where research scientists identify leads or potential candidates that have good ability to elicit or more or less trigger immune responses or antibodies. And these are first tested in cultured cells. And then if they show promising results, they may now be tested in lower animals like mice and rats, and then onwards to primates, higher animals like monkeys and chimpanzees. And in all these stages, safety is of paramount concern. It is ensured that the drug is safe in all these animals that I have spoken to, and then the drug has the ability to elicit a good sustainable immune response, generate antibodies to prime the host immune system to subsequently identify the organism if it gets in contact with it. Now, after all these findings show promising results, researchers would now document and present a comprehensive assessment to an independent regulatory body that would also ascertain these findings and then may or may not grant approval and authorization to start the actual clinical trials. Now, assuming a number of candidates, let's say 50 leads were taken through preclinical testing, about 30 make it through and then get approval to move into the phase 1 clinical trials. Now, these candidates are tested on healthy human volunteers, a few of them numbering between 20 and 80. Now, the vaccine candidates are given to this small number of people to assess safety first in humans. And then again, also to ascertain if it's capable of generating or triggering an immune response. Now, depending on these results, if it's comprehensive enough, researchers will again present it to an independent team of clinical experts who would go back to reassess and ascertain all these findings before they grant approval to move on to the next stage. Now, let me point out that this independent team of clinical experts may even pause the clinical trials to further ascertain for themselves stuff they feel are not convincing enough. And if some of these candidates are deemed not to meet the standards, they may be immediately taken out of trials. So now from phase 1 to phase 2, you still see that a number of vaccine candidates will also be dropped. Now the successful ones would now in phase 2 be tested in a larger number of volunteers, this time a few hundreds, between 100 and 300, to find out one, safety find, but then to assess how standardized dosing would work with these individuals, and then how this appropriate dose would now elicit a good immune response, generate antibodies to confer immunity on these people. And also, if some of these candidates meet requirements and after presenting to this independent team of experts, gain approval again, they would now move or progress to the phase 3. Now in phase 3, successful vaccine candidates are tested in a few thousand. So the sample size keeps increasing. This time between 1,000, 3,000 volunteers, healthy volunteers. And it is at this stage where the actual efficacy of the vaccine, candidate vaccine, is established. And some side effects, potential side effects, as and when these volunteers' reports are also documented. And then, if possible, some data on interactions or contraindications may also be documented. So if some of these vaccine candidates are successful through this phase, now researchers would put together all their findings and present it to an independent regulatory authority like FDA, EMA, etc., who would also submit these candidate vaccines to strict testing and monitoring on the basis of safety, quality, and efficacy. So give and take, you will still lose some of these candidates. So the very successful ones that are able to meet regulatory standards are now given approval and then authorization to be put on the market. It is at this stage that product registration and licensing and all the other stuff goes on, and then there can be upscaling for these vaccines to be made available in millions of doses for the people to use. Now, the last phase of clinical trials, which is the phase 4, starts or takes place after the successful candidates, which are now approved, are put on the market, what we call the post-market surveillance. It is at this stage that some long-term side effects, some interactions would be identified. And this stage strictly happens after the vaccines have been put on the market and not earlier. So this is basically the phases that any drug or vaccine, so to speak, would go through. Now, as I said, these phases are not necessarily time-bound. Depending on the resources, the facilities, and the capacity that you have to run all these things, there's the possibility that you can even run these phases concurrently, as happened with the COVID vaccine. Because there was an urgent need for the COVID vaccine, some of these phases were actually run concurrently. So simultaneously, a number of clinical trials were taking place. And the research teams also had the opportunity to submit a request for temporary authorization from their national regulatory authorities, and then an emergency use listing from WHO. Now, let me stress that this authorization in WHO emergency listing is only given if the vaccine candidate meets strict safety and efficacy criteria. So as you see, nobody can circumvent findings to, put something prematurely on the market, because there are lots of independent party stakeholders who play a part in the development process. So since 2019, the latter part of 2019, the race to find a COVID vaccine has been on. A lot of stakeholders have painstakingly gone through all these phases to get us a vaccine. And I can assure you that there were no cutting corners. Every vaccine is subject to the same rigorous checks and independent monitoring. Every vaccine candidate is taken through all this. And if any of them fails to meet the requirements, they are immediately taken out of trial. So although we are able to get a COVID vaccine in relatively faster time compared to other previously approved vaccines, they are as safe and as efficacious as all the others that have already been approved. So in conclusion, I can say that this COVID vaccine that we have has been approved for use, and it has gone through the same number of phases. It has gone through the same number of safety checks. And even this time, there were even more volunteers who were ready to avail themselves for clinical trials. So if you go through the documentation, you see that even more people avail themselves during the clinical trials compared to other vaccines that have already gained approval. So I believe that it's a tremendous feat for science. It's commendable, and I feel that people should rather celebrate all the stakeholders, those who put in money, who put in time, and resources, facilities, working around the clock to make sure that we have a safe and efficacious COVID vaccine to use.
Thank you very much, Ms. Martina Adriani-Mabosi. So you really ended on a very positive and optimistic note that people should not be worried. We should rather celebrate the development of these vaccines. We should celebrate science other than be scared of their safety. So important points you made. One is the fact that there is no stipulated time.
Evans, before you summarize, I think the beauty of science is the uniformity of knowledge. Listening to Martina, the same things I streamline as the reasons why we've come this far are the same points she's stating. The emphasis on the fact that they are not time bound. A lot of money was pumped into it. In America, for instance, over $11 billion US was pumped into COVID vaccine research, 11 billion. And this is on top of what the infrastructure they already had. So minus what the pharmaceutical companies contributed and so on, 11 billion. Also important is the fact that of all these vaccines on the market, none is based on new technology, okay? They're all based on already existing technology. So if you take the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, for instance, it's based on the same technology as a vaccine that is in the market for meningitis. Same vectors, same design, everything. If you take the mRNA model, which is by Pfizer and Moderna, it's based on a certain therapy developed for cancer research, for cancer vaccinations. So it was just a matter of tweaking these things to fit in COVID. None of them is new. So that time to develop a new platform was cut. They only took old things, tweaked them to suit COVID. A lot of money was pumped into it. Many people were available for drug testing. I worked on some of the trials. And for some of the trials, for the Oxford trial, for instance, Oxford AstraZeneca, we're talking about 60,000 people in a phase 3 trial, 60,000. That's not a small figure. The Pfizer vaccine was tested on 42,000 people before getting approval and licensing. The Sputnik Russian one on about 20,000 people. So these are huge figures, before they were finally authorized. But because people were readily available, the whole pandemic and all the trouble it has caused. I mean, imagine my beard and my hair looking like this because there's lockdown. You can't even get power. So if you come to tell me, we need you to participate in the trial, people wanted their liberty. And in the West, it's not like Africa where people are skeptical about trials. Trials they go on every day. People are very used to it. They know they are safe and they don't worry themselves about it. So no step was skipped at all. It's just a matter of many factors coming together to push the agenda. And as Martina rightly ended, if anything at all, we should be proud that the world is able to solve problems with this strong response, this strong kind of response when we set our minds to it. And in the future, when we have problems, if only we cooperate and set our minds to things, we can solve our own problems.
Thank you very much. I think you did the summary better than probably I would have done. But basically, just to also emphasize that there's no stipulated time to develop these vaccines, and all the other types of vaccines went through the processes. None of the phases were skipped. I was about to ask you, Martina, that with these phases that you elaborated, it gives one worry to imagine whether indeed the processes were not skipped. But I think you've done justice to it. And to add to what Doctor said, the foundation was already there, so people just built the blocks, and no wonder we're able to do that quickly. But Dr. Boachi, you kept on, I mean, in your earlier submission, you mentioned that the vaccine that is being received in Ghana is the Oxford AstraZeneca, but we also hear of COVAX. So what's the difference?
So COVAX is not a vaccine. I love that. I've heard it a number of times. COVAX is not a vaccine. COVAX is just a platform. So it's a donor platform. Now, while the vaccine development was going on, countries started signing agreements, deals to say, if you're able to produce yours first, I want to buy 20 million or 20 million doses of it. And so I'm giving you money for 1 million to help you develop it. But if it works, you must sell 20 million to me, and I must be a priority customer. So there were lots of agreements that were going on, and unfortunately, Africa we couldn't get involved. We didn't have the money. We didn't have the weight. Politically, we weren't very useful to most of these countries. So we could not get involved. The only way we could have had doses and signed on is if we agreed to participate in the trials, but they were going to get the people here. So for the huge figures I mentioned, the 60,000, 42,000 and so on, the Europeans were prepared to do it, very happy to do it. They didn't need Africans. They didn't need anybody to get involved. They weren't coming to beg anybody. They weren't going to waste time, trying to lobby or lure you into agreeing to do trials. So South Africa, for instance, volunteered to be part of the trials. So if you've been following the news, South Africa got many doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine because they participated in the trials. There are certain organizations like the WHO, like the Global Vaccine Alliance, the Global Alliance for Vaccines Initiative, Gavi, which over the years have been involved in getting vaccines and drugs at reduced prices for poor countries, African countries mostly, and some Asian countries and so on. So they came out to say, look, the way these deals are going, if we don't take care, all these poor countries will not be able to get access to the vaccines and they will die. Beyond that, COVID is a global problem. If the UK is able to vaccinate all its people, and then tomorrow a new strain develops in Ghana, and the vaccine in the UK is not able to work against the strain in Ghana, the British people are likely to suffer because there's traffic between Ghana and the UK. So as much as every country is solving this problem, they should also be interested in solving the problem for the less endowed countries. Now, this forum of donors, donor initiatives, the donor support workers, the organizations involved in coordinating the donations came together, and that's what we call COVAX. So COVAX is an initiative, basically aimed at getting vaccines for poor countries which were not able to sign some of these deals and are not receiving. If you follow in the news, even the European Union is divided over vaccines. They are fighting the UK because the UK is refusing to release vaccines to them. The UK wants to sort itself out first before giving to other countries. So COVAX is basically begging these countries for vaccines for the poor. Okay, and they've been able to get some from the UK, from AstraZeneca, Oxford AstraZeneca. They've been able to get some from Pfizer and so on, and some from India. They're trying to get bits and pieces for every country so that everybody gets a bit of it. And that's COVAX. So we have not received COVAX vaccines. We have received vaccines from COVAX. Okay. The vaccines we have received are the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines from them. But the government of Ghana has also, through its own initiative, been able to get some Sputnik 5 vaccines, which is from the Russian developer. That I think government is buying. But the Oxford AstraZeneca ones were free. They were donations through the COVAX initiative, but COVAX is not a vaccine.
Ghanaians are not happy when you say that this was vaccine, given to the poor. We don't want to be counted.
If you think you have your money, develop it. But anyway, a poor one cannot have pride.
Thanks so much. And maybe Tina, I come to you because Doctor mentioned something which is also, should I say, a bone of contention, or people are worried. He did say that, yes, if UK, for example, is able to vaccinate their entire population and Ghana is not able to do so, it might pose a challenge, to the fight against COVID-19. But still, Ghanaians, or a lot of people are worried that, these white people, they are more affected by COVID than we are. And so why should they donate these vaccines to us when they have not been. Partially, doctor addresses it, but what do you say to people who raise concerns that the white people are dying of COVID than we are? So why would they donate vaccines to us? Can we trust their vaccines?
Yeah, those are valid concerns. Now, the idea behind all the attempts to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 disease is the ability to achieve universal herd immunity. Dr. Boache mentioned aspects of it. I mean, if UK is able to vaccinate all its people and then they are okay, but Ghana is unable to do so. The persistence of the infection running wild within Ghana poses a lot of risk for the organism, the virus, to mutate. And then some of these mutations have been known to be even more transmissible and even more dangerous in the sense of it. And looking at the idea of universal, achieving universal herd immunity, if majority of the population has immunity against a particular disease, infectious disease, be it through vaccination-induced immunity, or be it people who have previously been exposed to the infection and developing some immunity against it, it creates some protection for the fewer people who have not been vaccinated, or who have not had pre-exposure to the virus by means of getting the infection, and who are supposedly non-immune to the particular virus. So we are all bringing each other up. You get it? If they do it, it will come back to attack them, because people I'm a Ghanaian student schooling in Germany. I would come back to Ghana to visit my family, bring a more virulent strain into Germany. Germany would have thought they are through, but we would bring back the infections one way or the other. And the fact that even though Ghana might seem insignificant, as Dr. probably said that we are poor or something, there are several other things we do that more or less adds to the success of Europe. We are producing several stuff for them. They are getting most of their raw materials from us. So you can imagine that if the infection runs wild and collapses Ghana, our health system, our socioeconomic whatever, and Ghana is unable to play all these parts for them, they are losing something. So I always say that the white man does nothing for anybody without anything being in it for, there should be something in it for them. So they give, exactly, they giving us, and in any case, 600,000 doses of the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine that was brought to Ghana doesn't compare to the millions of doses that are administered in Europe alone every day. So in effect, it's like just peanuts they've handed to us, but at least it's an effort to also help us to build some herd immunity within our jurisdiction.
Before I bring our audience in, this is about the second or third time you're talking about herd immunity. What is it? I've also seen it on social media. What is herd immunity? And I'm asking this because there are issues around whether once you get vaccinated, are you immune? And we hear of, what is it? If you get vaccinated, are you immune? And what is this herd immunity?
Okay, so when a person is vaccinated against the SARS-CoV-2 virus, the vaccine prepares or primes the body's natural defenses to be able to recognize and then fight off subsequent infection, because the vaccine triggers an immune response that produces some circulating antibodies and then some memory cells that are able to recognize the virus on subsequent exposure. Now, this prevents serious diseases or serious illness in individuals who are vaccinated, and they pose a very reduced risk of transmitting any infection to other people. Now, the vaccinated person's risk of infection is reduced, so they are all, naturally less likely to transmit the virus to others. Now, as more people within the community are vaccinated, it means that fewer people remain vulnerable and there is less possibility to transmit. Let me use this analogy. There are 100 people here, and then 80 out of the 100 people have been vaccinated. So these 80 people do not pose any risk of transmitting the SARS-CoV-2 virus to any of the rest of the 20 who are unvaccinated and who have not been exposed to the virus by way of having the infection earlier or something. Now look at another scenario where 20 out of the 100 is vaccinated. The rest of the 80 are not vaccinated one and may not have previously been exposed to the virus. So in these two scenarios, you would realize that the more the population gets vaccinated or are pre-exposed to the virus such that they build their own defenses against the virus, the less likely it is for the vulnerable people or people who are unable to get vaccinated or who have not previously been exposed or gotten infected by the virus to transmit to them. So in effect, there's a fewer portion of the population who are non-immune. They don't have any immunity towards the COVID virus, but the larger population that has been vaccinated or that has already been exposed to the infection have some immunity, and so they kind of protect them. Now, there are two ways of attaining herd immunity. One is by actively vaccinating your population as we are recommended to be doing, or two is letting the infection run wild around so that people who get infected and luckily do not die build some defenses against subsequent exposure. But you would know that the latter would come at a cost. One, there will be increased hospitalizations, health systems may even collapse, and the risk that even if it's 1% of all these people who are getting exposed, who are dying, it is so much price to pay. So I believe that vaccinating to create herd immunity, as I've explained, is the best way to go.
All right, thank you. We are actually running out of time. Let me bring in our viewers. So one from Gabriel Fiapono says, Dr. Kofi Justice is dope. I love him. AK Mensa says, were all these processes enumerated and elaborated by Martina followed, and how long? Were there any sensitization to that? I think they were followed. I think time is not a factor here. And how much should this sensitization be done to allay the fears of the public regarding the safety of the vaccines? Maybe we'll come to this as one of the concluding remarks of how you are able to allay the fears of people. He goes on, have all of these checks regarding the phases that Martina elaborated, were they done on all the vaccines available, and how did we arrive at AstraZeneca? I guess Doctor also gave an explanation to it. I would assume that with signing on to this COVAX.
If I may just add on to that, the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccines, I mean, even though we are getting them as a donation, they're also suitable for our environment. One, they are cheaper. Two, the storage conditions are more friendly. They can be stored at ordinary room temperature. The Pfizer vaccine, which is generally more efficacious, unfortunately, requires very, very cold temperatures for storage of about -20 degrees, which -70 degrees, which in our environment will be very expensive for us. We don't even have -70 freezers. Your home freezer, as cold as it is, only goes to -20. So imagine getting -70. That's extremely cold. There are special freezers for that, which we do not have in Ghana. So we could not have afforded any of the other ones, but the ones we've gone for, the Oxford, AstraZeneca, and the Sputnik ones. It's just a matter of the economics of it for us. I think that's basically what influenced the choice.
Maybe just a follow-up and quick on this, please. Doctor mentioned the vaccine we have is the Oxford type. Why do the vaccination cards have India recorded? Are they the same?
They have India recorded. So what happened? So the development was done by Oxford AstraZeneca. Oxford is the investing. AstraZeneca is the pharmaceutical company. But the factory that is producing it is called the Serum Institute, which is situated in India. Okay. So there are about 3 factories producing the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines. There's one in India, there's one in UK, and I think one in Switzerland. And the Indian factory is supplying for the COVAX initiative. But it's all the same thing. It's the same company doing it, the same formulation and everything. Okay. It's just the factories. Because the demand is so huge, one factory could not have supplied it. Yeah. Even now, there are still fights. They are just meeting 40% of the demand, just 40% of the demand. They needed to sort of decentralized.
So I think that's clear. And this was from Jenny Baki. I hope I got the pronunciation right. She also asked a very important question. What does it mean when they say the vaccine has X% efficacy? Does a higher efficacy rate mean we can forgo the preventive measures? I'll come to you, Dr. Boachi, to get an answer to that. But let me also ask.
Yeah, maybe Evans, I could. Okay, yeah.
Okay, go ahead with it.
To that, yeah. Now, with the efficacies that were stated there, you see the various vaccines went through clinical trials in different sample sizes, right? Because as Dr. rightly said, some were conducting clinical trials in 60,000, some were conducting clinical trials in 20,000, and even the approach and way in which these clinical trials were conducted were different. So definitely these percentages that are created out there would differ. But the point is that even the polio vaccine that has been rolled out, and I mean, now I stand corrected, polio has been eradicated from Ghana or something. Even that vaccine is only 50% efficacious. But look at the extent of good that it has done. Now you hardly see kids with all those malformations. So I believe that as long as we are getting some, even 60% and above is encouraging. I mean, it's encouraging. So
vaccines also do two things. You see, apart from the ability to protect you from getting infected in the first place, for those, if you do not get the full protection, they also mitigate the severity of disease you suffer. So today, for instance, my nurse was telling me they are seeing a lot more people coming in COVID positive, but with very little or no symptoms at all. And it's because they've been vaccinated. So if you get the full protection of the vaccine, which usually sets in after about a month, following vaccination, and that is why you are still asked to wear your mask after vaccination, because within that period you can still get infected. It takes some time for your body to build immunity, as I explained right from the beginning. So after your vaccination, you must still stick to the protocols, because anything can happen within that time whilst your body prepares itself to do. If you do not benefit from the full protection, it at least reduces the severity of disease you suffer if you get infected. So that is, so it's two things. It's either protecting you completely, or if it's unable to protect you completely, it reduces or takes out the severity of the disease you suffer, even if you get infected.
It's getting interesting. I guess perhaps the producers would have to do a part 2 of this. So one from Henry also says, I love this education. So this one, very long one from Gabriel Fiakono says, on February 2021, BBC News has reported that South Africa has halted a rollout AstraZeneca vaccination. They have cited many reasons, of which one of them is due to the emergence of a new variant of COVID-19. This is the same vaccine we have also received. Is there not more reason to be worried? In fact, they even stated that the vaccine has actually increased the case. Why don't we, Ghana, wait a little to see other countries to try first? So the government not risking the life of Ghanaians.
That's a very important question, and I'm happy someone brings it up. Now, if in the beginning, you remember I explained what the spike protein is and how important the spike protein has become to the principles of vaccination against COVID. Now, viruses are very smart organisms. When we say smart, by smart, I mean they learn quickly. So while your immune system prepares to fight the vaccine prepares to fight the virus also comes up with ways by which it can dodge your immune system, okay? Now, if today a virus attacks you and it notices that you kicked its head, tomorrow when it's coming, it's going to wear a helmet. And that's basically a mutation. So when we say mutations, it just means the virus going under various conformational changes just so it can dodge your immune system to be able to infect better. Remember, the virus is not your friend. Its job or its sustenance is dependent on its ability to infect you. So it changes itself to be able to infect you. Now, this change is helped or is better augmented when infection goes on from time to time. So the more people that get infected, the more the virus learns, or the quicker it learns, and the better it is for it to change itself. In South Africa, the virus noticed very quickly that the vaccines or the immune system was kicking against its spike protein. So what the strain did, what the virus did in South Africa is that there was a change in the conformation of its spike protein. It changed its conformation just so it can survive better and cause infection. So it's a survival tactic for it. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines are based on the design or the nature of the initial spike protein as was seen in the very, very first virus, which is the Wuhan virus, the one that was seen in Wuhan. Okay, so because of that, if you vaccinate people against that, against the Wuhan strain, the vaccine works perfectly. There has been a little confirmation in the UK as well. We've identified some viruses which also have some small change in the spike protein, but that change was not significant enough, and so the vaccine still works against the UK strain. However, the change that was identified in South Africa was so strong, it had almost changed its whole conformation, that now the vaccine which was targeting the spike protein, the one in South Africa has a different kind of spike protein, and the vaccine was not working against it. In Ghana, fortunately, we are doing some sequencing. There's a group in Legon, in the University of Ghana, a group of immunologists, and they are immunologists and geneticists. So they are doing what we call genetic sequencing. They're doing sequencing to find the kind of strains we have. Recently, they released their report, and they said about 85% of the strains in Ghana are the UK strain. And the other, in Accra, it's about 85%, and the other 15% is the original Chinese strain. So we don't have the South African strain in Ghana. And that's because, it's easy to understand why we have a lot of the UK strain in Ghana, because there's heavy traffic. People come to Ghana every day from the UK. Very little traffic with South Africa. So the vaccines will work for Ghana. It's not a cause for concern. We don't have any unusual strain. We have the two main strains which the vaccine works very well against. And South Africa did not reject it because the vaccines do not work at all. It's just because it doesn't work against its strain. In the UK, hospitalization has gone down within the past 2 weeks by about 40%. There's been about 80% drop in the risk of hospitalization for patients who get infected. And it's all because of the vaccines. If you've been following Israel, they've started opening up already because of the effect of the vaccine. So it does work. It's just a matter of...
It does. Thanks for that answer. And I'm sure that, Gabriel, you should be fine. Let me also say that when you were talking about the spike protein, particularly with the strain in South Africa, trying to dodge and move here, it sounded to me like Tom and Jerry, one trying to hide.
It's the same thing. It's actually the same thing. It tries to dodge your immune system, so it changes itself, changes the clothing, changes it. That's what happens.
Unfortunately, we are really running out of time, but people are enjoying the program. I'm enjoying it myself. But Tina, another question from Jenny Bake. She says, do you still need the vaccine if you have already been exposed to the virus? Maybe briefly.
Yes. If you have already been exposed to the virus, you can take the vaccine, because it's been shown that the kind of immunity you develop from taking a vaccine is somewhat stronger than what you get, the immunity you get after being exposed to the virus. And in any case, more is better. So even if you have some circulating antibodies, you can still take the vaccine and then get the induced immunity, which is much more stronger. And so you are good to go.
Thank you. There's a question here, maybe.
Natural infection only protects you for about 3-4 months. If you get infected, the immunity develops about 3-4 months, and then it goes away. But the vaccine one stays much longer. So, you still take it, as Martina said.
Great. There's another one. This is more technical, I can assume. Can Doctor explain what it means when they said that AstraZeneca is a genetically modified virus type? Briefly, because our time is really fast spent, but I have one last question to both of you. So we would have to do a part 2, I hope so.
So as I mentioned earlier, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is based on the DNA of the spike protein. Now, viruses infect human beings. The viruses are not able to reproduce themselves, okay? That is why sometimes you are told the virus is not a living thing. Sometimes we say it's a living thing, other times we say it's not a living thing. It's not a living thing because it cannot reproduce, it cannot give birth. So if you look at it like that, then viruses should have been extinct by now. There should have been no viruses in the world because they are not able to give birth. But there's a way they're able to do it, and they do that by infecting human beings and animals. So they infect you, they put their genetic material into your cells, and then your cells rather produce the virus. And that is why HIV and cold, if you catch common cold, that's actually what has happened. The virus has infected you, it has put its genetic material into your cells, and your cells are now producing the virus. So that is how viruses reproduce, okay? Now, what the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is that it is inserting the genetic material of the spike protein into your cells so that your cells will now produce the spike protein in the same way that you produce viruses when you get infected. To be able to enter your cells, you cannot just push the genetic material straight like that. If you inject the genetic material into the body, it will not go into the cells. You need to be able to push it. And to be able to do that, what they did is to take a certain virus called adenovirus, which is quite common, okay, causes common colds and so on. They took out all the adenovirus genetic material. So they emptied the adenovirus and only took the shell, because the shell has the ability to penetrate into cells. And then they put the genetic material of the spike protein into the empty adenovirus. So it's an empty shell. You are using the shell as a vehicle, because that is how it will be able to enter your cells. Once it enters your cells, it releases the genetic material, just as will happen in a natural infection. And then your body starts to produce the spike protein. Because the spike protein will now be in your body, your immune system will recognize it and start, building itself, as we explained how vaccines work initially. So it's genetic material, but it's not human genetic material. It is also not able to change your DNA because it's not human. And two, because that is how naturally viruses work. Every human being has had viral genetic material inserted into you several times, but it does not change you. It cannot change your DNA. It cannot affect your DNA. And that's what it is.
Thank you very much. Perhaps this concern of, and thanks, Gabriel, for bringing this question up of whether it's able to change the DNA. And thanks also for emphasizing that.
It cannot change your DNA.
But maybe I should ask you, Martina, what about, because of this concept of DNA, we've heard some Ghanaians also saying that then perhaps these vaccines contain some microchips by the whites. People are talking about the issue of 666 that Christians talk about. Are their concerns not legitimate if it's produced in this form, even though Doc has mentioned that they do not change our DNA? Do we have any microchips in them so that we are careful?
So Evans, as you may have heard, the vaccine is being given in 0.5 ml doses. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you can conceptualize what 0.5 ml is, and even the kind of needle that is used to administer. We all saw the president take his jab. And I am wondering which kind of microchip or RFID device whatsoever that can be able to fit into that narrow aperture of the needle, so to speak. I believe that all these conspiracy theories stemmed from the fact that I think there might have been a video circulating where it's actually a technology. A lot of people in Ghana have chips fitted to their cars so that they can know the location of where their cars are. I see a lot of commercials so that if somebody steals my car from my house, because there's a chip on the car, I can locate where the GPRS will help me to locate where the car is. I believe that technology was initially put on and it's not even in the vaccines. I believe they did that to track the kind of batches. If you go well into pharmaceutical manufacturing, every processing cycle we give batch numbers, and it's a very streamlined process. So I believe they would want to track which batches go to this country or which batches did that. It's all a means of tracking, just in the case that you would want to track your car in case there's anything. So these chips, I believe, even if they were, the idea that was churned out was not to put them in the vaccine, but was proposed to put on the various batches of millions of batches of the vaccines to help track where they are taken. And even people pilfer some of these things. For all you know, you've seen a number of medications that are for cough use only, for this use only, because they are given on programs for free or something, or at subsidized prices, and people can take them and sell them. So in this case, trying to tag the vaccines in a way was to make sure that nobody is diverting consignments to anywhere for financial gains or something. But those things are not within the vaccines. They cannot be. It just is incomprehensible. I mean.
All right. So this one I should say to you, hey, Mogu, please. In fact, our time is up. The 60 minutes is up, but we've been giving extra 10 minutes. I don't know if that is okay for you, because people are enjoying it, so that you can just give your concluding remark and your advice to Ghanaians to help, protect the spread of COVID-19. One last message says to Irabina Otu says, very informative session. Well done, Doc and Martina. AK Mensa says, how come the nurses in Ghana don't wear gloves during this issue also came up?
Ghana, we fuss over too many unnecessary things. It's not standard to wear gloves for vaccination. When you're vaccinating, you're not injecting into a vein, you're injecting into muscles. You don't expect to encounter blood. So, wearing gloves, when you wear gloves and you're taking off the gloves, there's a risk of viral or bacterial spread. It comes with its own risk of spread. So you do the risk-benefit analysis. you are not injecting into a vein, you're not going to encounter blood. What's the point of wearing gloves? Yeah. And that's why we don't wear gloves. So it's standard procedure. Nowhere in the world you wear it. You only wear gloves if you are expected to encounter blood, or the person has a sore there, an open, skin or something. But ordinarily, you don't wear gloves. So I think they haven't seen child vaccinations before. You don't wear gloves anywhere.
And even to add to what Doc has said, I believe in between patients, they do sanitize their hands or something, just that it's not caught on camera or something. So
you must wash your hands between everything.
So it's actually a standard practice, because people have videos from the US. Of course, others did compare also in the case of the UK, where the nurse was not wearing. But the answer is it's not a standard practice, because it's not blood.
Not for ordinary vaccination, for routine vaccination. Exceptions, but it's not routine.
Great.
So I have to run.
Definitely.
So, in summary, just to say, look, take your vaccines. Don't listen to any of the conspiracy theories. I took my vaccines long ago, and I've been fine. I have been working on the trials before the vaccines were released on the market. I saw many people who took the vaccines while we were doing the testing, phase 2, phase 3. Nobody suffered any adverse events. Nobody died. None of my clients died. I still see them when they come for review. They're all fine. They're very safe. The vaccines that were brought to Ghana are no different from what is being used anywhere else in the world. The Ghana FDA, Food and Drugs Authority, has checked these vaccines and ensured and confirmed that they are the same as what is being given everywhere else. There's nothing to worry about. If you take it, you may get some side effects. You may get a little flu-like, you get some flu-like symptoms, a little fever, tiredness here and there. Just take some paracetamol, drink a lot of water, get some rest, and then you'll be fine. There's nothing to worry about. Take your vaccines. Don't listen to any of those conspiracy theories. None of them is true. In any case, you've seen the president, you've seen all the MPs, and they are sharing it amongst themselves. So go and take yours before it finishes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I guess we might have to do a part 2 of this, particularly to educate Ghanaians not to be scared and some of the misconceptions that we have in Ghana. But thank you very much, Dr. Justice Kofi Boakye-Appiah. We would finish with Martina with the remaining 5 minutes. But
yeah, so quickly to add to what Doctor has said, if you are privileged to fall within the category of people who are eligible to take the vaccine, do take it. And let me add that vaccinating doesn't take away the initial risk of getting infected. So still wear your masks, still practice social distancing, and still wash your hands regularly. And then put in mind that it's not all people who are privileged to get access to the vaccine. So you taking care of yourself or protecting yourself, it's indirectly you taking care of the vulnerable people within the society. So get vaccinated. Vaccinations are good. Vaccinations help mitigate the severity of diseases. Vaccinations prevent diseases in the first place. And I wish that these vaccines had come a couple of months earlier. I would not have lost some very people who are dear to me to COVID disease. So I believe we are all privileged to be living, to have the opportunity to take the vaccine. And so let's go get the vaccines.
Let's go get the vaccines, get vaccinated in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19. But I was about to leave you, and of course, leave myself, if I can say that. But what are some of the normal risks? Just the last one, because I have heard people who have taken the vaccines who say that, yeah, I had severe headache, I have this. And I've heard others who say, yeah, but that's good. That means the vaccine is working. What are some of the normal risks and side effects of COVID-19 so that people are aware when they take these vaccines, they are not scared or worried of any unnecessary infections? Briefly, so that we can.
Okay, so just, with all other vaccinations, there are some very common side effects like some tenderness or pain at the site of injection, general sense of feeling ill, what we term as malaise, tiredness, fatigue, chills, headache, nausea. All these are common side effects, and they mostly resolve within a matter of days. For some of them, you don't even need to take paracetamol. They will resolve over a few days. And there are, of course, some peculiar side effects like swelling, abnormal swelling at the site of injection, some upper respiratory tract, flu-like symptoms, etc. They are all expected, and they would resolve over a period of days. In any case, let me point out that the Food and Drugs Authority of Ghana has a very an app that you can use to report adverse reactions. I believe the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana, most pharmacists are on several platforms advocating and conscientizing people to make use of the app. Aside that, if you have any of these issues, you can go back to where you were vaccinated to report it. It's perfectly fine. It's part of the phase 4 clinical trials I talked about, because after the drugs have been put on the market, we are now coming to monitor for long-term side effects and other issues that may come up. So it's perfectly fine when you experience these things. They are self-limiting, they will resolve in a number of days, and do well to report them so that they can be documented.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Martina Adrianima Bonsu. We also had Dr. Justice Kofi Boache Apia, who just took leave of us. Thank you very much, our fellow Sepsarians who followed us. And to Ghanaians, we would also say that please get vaccinated, get vaccinated, get vaccinated. The vaccines are safe. They've been produced safely, as we have heard today. You would definitely come across some normal and common risk and side effects. That should not be an issue of concern at all. But let us not forget that as we get vaccinated, we do not lower our guards. We should still follow the common preventive tips. Let us still mask up. Let us observe social distance if we can. Let us wash our hands. And then let us take fruits that could boost our immune system. We need you alive. We need ourselves alive. Thank you very much, our fellow Sepsarians. And I am Evans Apia Kisi, the host of Sepsa Talk. See you again next week as we bring you another interesting discussion. Have a lovely evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the globe. Bye-bye.